Ice Cube, Monique, Terrence Howard, they were laughed at, doubted, and told they would never make it. But they didn't just prove the critics wrong, they became icons. From awkward early roles to red carpet legends, here are the 20 black actors who turned mockery into motivation. Number 1. Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry grew up dirt poor in New Orleans, sleeping in his car and working odd jobs just to survive. When he first tried his hand at theater in the early 90s, people couldn't stop laughing, and not in a good way. His first play flopped so hard he lost everything, including his apartment. But Perry kept pushing, writing plays in his tiny room while eating nothing but ramen noodles for weeks. The real mockery started when he introduced Medea, that gun-toting, Bible-thumping grandmother character that had people rolling their eyes nationwide. Critics called it minstrel show nonsense and said Perry was setting black people back decades. Hollywood executives wouldn't even return his calls. They said his melodramatic storylines were too cheesy, his dialogue too preachy, and his production values looked like they came from a high school drama class. But here's the thing nobody saw coming. While critics were busy trash-talking Perry's work, regular folks were lining up around the block to see his plays. He was selling out venues faster than Beyoncé concerts. Perry figured out something the fancy film critics missed completely. People were hungry for stories that spoke to their real lives, even if those stories came wrapped up in a dress and some fake teeth. When Perry finally got his first movie deal, the mockery got even worse. Film snobs said his movies were cinematic disasters and wondered how someone who couldn't direct traffic was getting million-dollar budgets. But Perry had the last laugh when his movies started making crazy money. We're talking $100 million worldwide on tiny budgets. Today, he owns his own studio lot in Atlanta, worth over $1 billion, and has more control over his projects than most A-list directors dream of having. Number 2. Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart's journey to superstardom started in Boston, where he was just a short kid with big dreams and an even bigger mouth. His early stand-up sets were rough, really rough. Comedy club audiences would heckle him mercilessly, making jokes about his height before he could even get to his punchlines. Some nights, he would get booed off stage completely. When Hart first started appearing in movies, the mockery was brutal. Critics said he was a one-trick pony who could only play the loud, scared sidekick. Movie reviewers called his performances annoying and exhausting, saying he was trying way too hard to be funny. Even other comedians would crack jokes about how Hart was all energy and no substance. His early movie roles didn't help his case either. Films like Soul Plane and Scary Movie 3 got torn apart by critics who said Hart was just screaming his way through scenes without any real comedic timing. People said he was the Black Chris Tucker, but without the charm. The internet was particularly savage, with memes making fun of his height and his high-pitched voice becoming viral sensations. But Hart had something most people didn't see coming, an incredible work ethic and business sense that would make Wall Street executives jealous. While people were busy making fun of his movies, he was building a comedy empire through social media, connecting directly with fans who actually found him hilarious. He started selling out massive arenas, something most comedians never achieve. Hart turned that mockery into motivation, using every joke about his height as material for his sets. He made fun of himself before anyone else could, which completely flipped the script. Today, he's one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world, making more money per movie than actors twice his size. His production company churns out hit after hit, and those same critics who called him annoying are now analyzing his comedy genius. Number 3. Taraji Henson. Taraji Henson's road to respect was paved with people telling her she wasn't leading lady material. Growing up in Washington, D.C., she struggled to pay for acting school at Howard University, working multiple jobs just to afford tuition. When she first moved to Hollywood, casting directors would take one look at her and immediately slot her for best friend or sassy neighbor roles. Her early movie appearances got her labeled as just another angry black woman actress by critics who couldn't see past the characters she was being forced to play. In films like Baby Boy, people said she was too loud, too ghetto, too much. Entertainment reporters would write her off as someone who could only play one type of character, the tough girl from the hood who talks with her hands and rolls her neck. The really painful part was when Henson started landing bigger roles but still couldn't catch a break from the mockery. Even when she starred opposite Brad Pitt in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, some reviewers said she was out of her league and didn't belong in such a prestigious production. They questioned whether she had the acting chops to hang with A-list talent. But Henson kept grinding, taking every role seriously and studying her craft like she was preparing for final exams. She would spend hours researching characters, working with dialect coaches, and pushing herself to find new layers in every performance. When Empire premiered and she brought Cookie Leon to life, suddenly everyone who had been sleeping on her talent woke up real quick. Number 4. Gabrielle Union. Gabrielle Union's early career was basically a masterclass in being underestimated. Starting out as a model, she faced immediate skepticism when she decided to try acting. Casting directors saw her look and immediately typed her as the pretty girl who couldn't possibly have any real acting ability. Her first roles in teen movies like She's All That and 10 Things I Hate About You got her dismissed as just another beautiful, face-filling space on screen. The mockery really ramped up when Union started landing lead roles in romantic comedies. Critics would tear her apart, saying she had no comedic timing and couldn't carry a movie on her own. Reviews for films like The Brothers and Deliver Us from Eva were particularly harsh, with some writers suggesting she should stick to modeling or find herself a rich husband and retire from acting altogether. What made the criticism even more stinging was how personal it got. Entertainment blogs would dissect her looks, her voice, her mannerisms, basically everything except her actual acting ability. They would compare her unfavorably to other actresses, saying she was trying too hard to be the next Halle Berry or Whitney Houston without having their talent. Union's breakthrough moment came with Bring It On, but even then, people said she was just playing herself, the mean girl cheerleader. Critics couldn't see that she was actually bringing real depth and intelligence to what could have been a throwaway villain role. She made that character memorable and quotable, but instead of getting credit, people just assumed it was easy. The real turning point was when Union started choosing more challenging roles and speaking out about issues in Hollywood. Her performance in Birth of a Nation showed a completely different side of her acting ability, but by then, she had already proven herself as a producer and activist. She wasn't just waiting for people to take her seriously. She was creating her own opportunities and demanding respect on her own terms. Number 5. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's path to becoming one of Hollywood's hottest leading men started with people calling him stiff as a board. His early work on soap operas, like All My Children, got him labeled as just another pretty boy who looked good on camera, but couldn't actually act his way out of a paper bag. Soap opera acting is notoriously over the top, but critics said Jordan couldn't even master that style properly. When he landed his role on The Wire, things should have gotten better, but the mockery just shifted. Some viewers complained that his character Wallace was too soft, too emotional for such a hard-hitting show. They said Jordan's baby face made it impossible to take him seriously as a street-smart kid from Baltimore. Internet forums were full of people saying he was miscast and brought down the show's credibility. His movie career started even rougher. Early films like Hardball and Blackout were critical disasters, and Jordan caught most of the blame. Reviews described his performances as wooden, unconvincing, and amateur hour. One particularly harsh critic said watching Jordan act was like watching a mannequin try to come to life. The mockery reached its peak when Jordan was cast as Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four reboot. Before the movie even came out, fans were destroying him online, questioning his ability to play such an iconic character. When the film flopped spectacularly, Jordan became the internet's favorite punching bag, with people blaming him personally for ruining their childhood memories. But Jordan had been quietly studying and improving his craft the whole time. His work with director Ryan Coogler on Fruitvale Station showed a completely different actor, one who could carry an entire film with subtle, powerful performances. When Creed came out, even his harshest critics had to admit they had been wrong. Number 6. Monique. Monique's comedy career started in the roughest comedy clubs in Baltimore, where she had to fight for every laugh. Her style was loud, unapologetic, and in your face, exactly the kind of comedy that made industry insiders cringe. Early critics said she was too crude, too aggressive, and appealed only to a narrow audience that appreciated lowbrow humor. When Monique started appearing on television, the mockery got worse. Her show, The Parkers, was constantly criticized for being stereotypical and over the top. Television critics said she was playing into negative stereotypes about black women, being loud and sassy without any real depth or intelligence. They questioned whether she was helping or hurting representation in entertainment. The film industry was even less kind to Monique. Her early movie appearances were in comedies that critics called painful to watch. Reviewers said she had no range beyond yelling and making faces, and that her presence in any film automatically lowered its quality. Some entertainment writers suggested she should stick to stand-up and stay out of movies entirely. What really stung was when industry people would dismiss her as just another ghetto comedian who couldn't transition to more sophisticated entertainment. They would compare her unfavorably to other plus-sized actresses like Queen Latifah, saying Monique lacked the class and versatility to be taken seriously in Hollywood. Everything changed when director Lee Daniels cast her in Precious. Suddenly, the same woman critics had written off as a one-trick pony was delivering one of the most powerful dramatic performances of the year. Her portrayal of an abusive mother was so convincing and terrifying that it made people completely forget about her comedy background. When she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, it was like watching someone transform from a punchline into a serious artist overnight. Number 7. Tracy Morgan. Tracy Morgan's comedy journey started in the Bronx, where his childhood was anything but funny. Growing up in the projects with a father who struggled with addiction, Morgan used humor as a survival mechanism. But when he first started doing stand-up, audiences didn't always know what to make of his unpredictable style. His early sets were wildly inconsistent, sometimes brilliant, sometimes completely off the rails. When Morgan joined Saturday Night Live, the mockery from comedy snobs was immediate and harsh. They said his characters were too cartoonish, too weird, and that he was trying way too hard to be the next Eddie Murphy. Critics complained that his sketches were hit or miss, mostly miss, and that he was the weakest link in the cast. His performances were so unpredictable that even his own cast members didn't know what to expect. Some nights, Morgan would deliver comedy gold. Other nights, he would completely bomb or go off script in ways that made everyone uncomfortable. Comedy purists said he was unprofessional and didn't understand the craft of sketch comedy. The criticism got personal when people started questioning Morgan's mental state and suggesting he wasn't smart enough for sophisticated comedy. Late-night talk show hosts would make jokes about his bizarre interviews and strange public statements. Some comedy critics wrote him off as a novelty act who'd gotten lucky but couldn't sustain a real career. But Morgan's authenticity was exactly what made him special, even when people couldn't see it. His comedy came from a real place of pain and struggle, which gave it an edge that more polished comedians couldn't match. When 30 Rock premiered and he brought Tracy Jordan to life, suddenly his unpredictability became his greatest strength. Number 8. Taye Diggs. Taye Diggs faced a unique kind of mockery in Hollywood. He was too handsome for his own good. When he first started acting, casting directors and critics couldn't see past his looks to appreciate his actual talent. Coming from Broadway, where he had proven himself in demanding musicals like Rent, Diggs found himself typecast as the pretty boy love interest in romantic comedies. His early film roles in movies like How Stella Got Her Groove Back got him dismissed as just eye candy for female audiences. Critics said he had no depth as an actor and was coasting on his good looks and charm. Entertainment writers would joke that his main acting skill was looking good without his shirt on. The mockery got worse when Diggs started appearing in what critics called formulaic black romantic comedies. Movies like The Best Man were commercially successful, but got torn apart by reviewers who said they were predictable and that Diggs was playing the same character over and over again. Some critics suggested he was the male equivalent of a rom-com actress, pretty to look at, but not much substance underneath. What really frustrated Diggs was that people ignored his theater background and vocal abilities. He had spent years honing his craft on Broadway, singing and dancing in challenging productions, but Hollywood only wanted to see him as a leading man in lightweight movies. Critics acted like he had stumbled into success without any real training or skill. The television show Private Practice should have changed perceptions, but some critics said even there he was just playing another version of the handsome, sensitive guy. They couldn't see that Diggs was actually bringing nuance and complexity to what could have been a generic doctor character. His recent work in more challenging roles has finally started to shift the conversation, but it took years for people to take him seriously as a complete actor. Number 9. Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg's path to stardom was unlike anyone else's, mainly because she didn't look or sound like anyone's idea of a leading lady. When she first started performing stand-up comedy in the 1980s, some audiences literally didn't know what to make of her. Her style was raw, political, and completely different from other female comedians of the time. Early critics said Goldberg was too weird, too aggressive, and too unconventional to ever make it in mainstream entertainment. Her one-woman show got mixed reviews, with some reviewers saying her characters were interesting but that she lacked the polish and appeal to reach broader audiences. Industry insiders questioned whether someone who looked and sounded like Goldberg could ever be a real movie star. When Steven Spielberg cast her in The Color Purple, the mockery reached new levels. Some critics couldn't believe that this unknown comedian with dreadlocks and an unconventional appearance was being trusted with such an important dramatic role. They questioned Spielberg's judgment and predicted the movie would suffer because of his casting choice. The criticism got personal and ugly, with some entertainment writers making fun of Goldberg's looks, her name, and her background. They said she was too unconventional to be taken seriously in Hollywood and that her success would be short-lived because audiences wouldn't accept her as a leading lady. But Goldberg's Oscar nomination for The Color Purple shut up most of the doubters, at least temporarily. Her performance was so powerful that even critics who dismissed her had to admit she had real talent. When she won the Oscar for Ghost, it was like watching the ultimate underdog story play out in real time. The same people who had said she was too weird for Hollywood were suddenly analyzing her unique screen presence and calling her a one-of-a-kind talent. Number 10. Martin Lawrence. Martin Lawrence's comedy style was so loud and physical that it made some people cringe from day one. Starting out in the Washington, D.C. comedy scene, Lawrence's stand-up was full of characters and voices that audiences either loved or hated. There was no middle ground. Early critics said his comedy was too crude, too over-the-top, and appealed only to people with questionable taste. When Lawrence got his own television show, Martin, the criticism became a full-time job for entertainment writers. They called the show Lowest Common Denominator Comedy and said Lawrence's slapstick show was setting television back decades. Critics complained that his characters were stereotypical and that his physical comedy was more annoying than funny. The mockery got worse when Lawrence started making movies. Films like House Party and Boomerang got him labeled as someone who could only play the loud, obnoxious sidekick. Critics said he was trying too hard to be the next Eddie Murphy, but lacked the intelligence and timing that made Murphy's comedy work. His personal life didn't help his reputation either. Lawrence's off-screen antics and legal troubles gave critics even more ammunition to dismiss him as a comedy lightweight who couldn't handle success. Some entertainment writers suggested he was proof that not everyone deserved fame and fortune. But Lawrence had something his critics couldn't see. an incredible ability to connect with regular people who saw themselves in his characters. Martin might have made critics cringe, but it made millions of viewers laugh until their sides hurt. His movies might not have won awards, but they made serious money and launched countless catchphrases that are still quoted today. When Bad Boys proved he could anchor a major action franchise, even his harshest critics had to admit they had underestimated his appeal and staying power. Number 11. Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba Jr.'s story is wild because he literally went from Oscar winner to Hollywood punchline faster than you can say, "Show me the money." After his incredible performance in Jerry Maguire earned him an Academy Award in 1997, everyone expected him to become the next Denzel Washington. Instead, he made some of the most questionable movie choices in Hollywood history. The mockery started almost immediately after his Oscar win. Gooding followed up his career-defining role by starring in What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, which confused audiences who expected him to pick meatier dramatic roles. Then came Chill Factor, a buddy action flick that bombed so hard it practically disappeared from theaters overnight. Critics started whispering that maybe his Oscar win was a fluke. But the real roasting began when Gooding started appearing in straight-to-DVD movies that made people wonder if he'd lost a bet. Films like Boat Trip, where he played a straight man pretending to be gay on a cruise ship, got torn apart by critics who couldn't believe an Oscar winner was making such terrible choices. Entertainment writers started calling him the cautionary tale of what happens when you pick paychecks over prestige. The internet was particularly brutal to Gooding during the 2000s. Memes about his career decline became viral sensations, with people joking that he was the only Oscar winner working at the local multiplex. His appearance in Daddy Day Camp and Are We Done Yet had critics questioning whether he'd forgotten how to act entirely. Some reviewers suggested he should return his Oscar and apologize to the Academy. What people didn't realize was that Gooding never stopped grinding. While critics were busy making fun of his movie choices, he was supporting his family and staying active in an industry that's notorious for forgetting about actors overnight. His recent work in The People vs. O.J. Simpson reminded everyone that the talent was always there. He had just been having fun and paying bills while waiting for the right opportunity to show it again. Number 12. Jaden Smith. Jaden Smith caught more heat than a microwave burrito, and most of it started before he could even legally drive. Being Will Smith's son meant every move he made was under a microscope, but his early acting performances had people questioning whether nepotism had gone too far. His debut in The Pursuit of Happiness was cute because he was a little kid acting alongside his real dad, but when he started landing lead roles, the mockery began. The Karate Kid remake in 2010 had martial arts fans up in arms before the movie even hit theaters. People were furious that Hollywood was remaking a beloved classic with a kid who looked like he'd never been in a real fight. Critics said Jaden was too soft, too privileged, and too obviously a product of Hollywood nepotism to carry such an iconic franchise. The movie made money, but the backlash was fierce. Then came After Earth in 2013, which became the internet's favorite punching bag for months. Jaden's performance got absolutely destroyed by critics who said he had no screen presence and couldn't carry a movie without his father's help. The film's failure was blamed largely on Jaden's wooden acting, with some reviewers suggesting he should consider a different career path entirely. Social media turned Jaden into a meme factory, with people making fun of everything from his acting to his fashion choices to his philosophical tweets. He became the poster child for Hollywood kids who thought they were deeper than they actually were. Internet trolls would screenshot his social media posts and turn them into jokes about pretentious teenagers who would never faced real problems. But here's what the haters missed. Jaden never let the mockery stop him from being exactly who he wanted to be. While people were busy making fun of his movies, he was building a music career that actually connected with young fans who appreciated his willingness to be different. His fashion choices that got mocked became trend-setting moments that influenced other young artists. He turned the criticism into fuel for creative projects that spoke to his generation in why that traditional Hollywood couldn't understand. Number 13. Tiffany Haddish. Tiffany Haddish's rise to stardom was like watching someone climb Mount Everest in high heels. Impressive, but painful to watch at times. Her early stand-up comedy was rough around the edges, with some critics saying she relied too heavily on being loud and animated to get laughs. Comedy purists complained that her style was more about energy than actual wit. Her first television appearances didn't help her case with critics. Shows like That's So Raven and My Name is Earl featured Haddish in small roles where she played the sassy, loudmouthed character that some people said was feeding into stereotypes. Entertainment writers started labeling her as another ghetto comedian who could only play one type of character. When Haddish started landing bigger roles, the criticism got more pointed. Her performance in Keanu was dismissed by some critics as over-the-top and annoying. They said she was trying too hard to steal scenes and that her comedy style was too abrasive for mainstream audiences. Some reviewers suggested she should tone down her personality if she wanted to be taken seriously. The breakthrough came with Girls Trip, but even then, some critics said Haddish was just playing herself and questioned whether that counted as real acting. They complained that her character Dina was too outrageous and that Haddish was basically doing stand-up comedy in the middle of a movie. Some entertainment writers wondered if she could ever play a normal, subdued character. What those critics completely missed was that Haddish's authenticity was her secret weapon. She wasn't trying to be someone else. She was bringing her real personality and experiences to every role. Her willingness to be vulnerable about her tough childhood and struggles with homelessness made her comedy feel genuine in a way that more polished performers couldn't match. When she hosted Saturday Night Live and delivered that legendary opening monologue about growing up in foster care, even her harshest critics had to admit they had underestimated her depth and intelligence. Number 14. Ice Cube. Ice Cube faced the ultimate challenge when he decided to transition from hardcore rap to Hollywood acting. Nobody thought a gangsta rapper could pull off playing characters that weren't just versions of himself. His early acting attempts were met with skepticism from critics who couldn't see past his NWA persona to imagine him as a legitimate actor. When John Singleton cast Cube in Boys in the Hood, some people thought it was just stunt casting, putting a real rapper in a movie about street life to add authenticity. Critics were prepared to dismiss his performance as just another rapper trying to extend his 15 minutes of fame. The expectation was that he had be wooden, unconvincing, and prove that musicians should stick to music. But Cube surprised everyone with his natural screen presence and emotional depth in Boys in the Hood. Still, critics weren't ready to take him seriously as a real actor. When he started appearing in comedies like Friday, some reviewers said he was selling out and abandoning the serious artistic potential he had shown. They questioned whether he was choosing easy paychecks over challenging roles that could establish him as a serious performer. The mockery got worse when Cube started appearing in family-friendly comedies like Are We There Yet? And The Long Shots. Hip-hop fans felt betrayed, saying he'd gone from hardcore gangsta rap to making movies for suburban families. Critics said he was diluting his brand and proving that he wasn't a serious actor after all. But while critics were busy questioning his artistic integrity, he was building a diverse filmography that showed his range and appeal to different audiences. His production work behind the scenes was creating opportunities for other artists and helping to change how Hollywood depicted urban communities. When Straight Outta Compton became a massive hit, with Cube serving as producer, it proved he had been building something much bigger than anyone realized. Number 15. Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon got labeled as corny so early in his career that it practically became his middle name. Starting as a teenager doing stand-up comedy, Cannon's clean, family-friendly style made him an easy target for critics who said real comedy had to be edgy and dangerous. His early performances were dismissed as too safe and too eager to please. When Cannon landed his own show on Nickelodeon, The Nick Cannon Show, critics said it proved he was just a kid's entertainer who couldn't handle adult audiences. The show's cancellation after one season gave his detractors ammunition to claim he was a flash in the pan who had gotten lucky but couldn't sustain success. His movie career started with even more mockery. Drumline was successful, but critics said Cannon was just playing himself and that his performance lacked depth. When he appeared in Love Don't Cost a Thing, reviewers called it a generic teen comedy that wasted everyone's time, including Cannon's. Some entertainment writers suggested he should stick to hosting and leave the acting to professionals. The corny label really stuck when Cannon became the host of America's Got Talent. Critics said his jokes were predictable, his energy was forced, and his style was too wholesome for television that was supposed to be exciting. Social media was brutal, with people making fun of his outfits, his delivery, and his seemingly endless enthusiasm for everything. But Cannon had the last laugh by building an entertainment empire while his critics were busy making fun of him. His radio show became nationally syndicated, his comedy specials found devoted audiences, and his hosting gigs proved he had the rare ability to connect with people across different demographics. When Wild 'N Out became a hit on MTV, it showed that Cannon understood comedy and entertainment in ways that traditional critics couldn't appreciate. Number 16. Brandy Norwood. Brandy faced the classic challenge of being taken seriously as an actress when everyone knew her as a singer first. Her early acting attempts were met with skepticism from critics who couldn't separate her musical persona from her dramatic performances. When Moesha premiered, some critics dismissed it as just another teen sitcom with a pop star trying to act. The mockery got worse when Brandy started taking on more serious dramatic roles. Her performance in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer got torn apart by horror movie fans who said she was too much of a goody two-shoes to be convincing in a slasher film. Critics said her acting was stiff and that she was clearly out of her element trying to do anything other than wholesome family entertainment. Television critics were particularly harsh when Brandy tried to transition to more mature roles. Her appearance in shows like The Game was met with reviews that questioned whether she could play anything other than the sweet, innocent characters that made her famous. Some writers suggested she was typecast for life and should accept her limitations. The criticism got personal when people started comparing Brandy unfavorably to other singer-actresses like Whitney Houston and Janet Jackson. Entertainment writers would analyze her performances and conclude that she lacked the natural acting ability that some musicians possessed. They said her delivery was too sing-songy and that she couldn't separate her musical training from her dramatic work. But Brandy kept pushing herself into more challenging territory, refusing to be limited by other people's expectations. Her recent work in Queens showed a completely different side of her acting ability, with critics finally acknowledging that she had been growing and improving as a performer all along. Number 17. Raven-Symoné. Raven-Symoné grew up in front of cameras, which meant every awkward phase and acting mistake was preserved for posterity. Starting as a child actor on The Cosby Show, her early performances were cute, but not particularly impressive to critics who expected child actors to be miniature adults with perfect timing. When That's So Raven premiered, critics dismissed it as typical Disney Channel fare that wouldn't appeal to anyone over 12 years old. They said Raven's comedy style was too broad, too physical, and too obviously designed for children who didn't know any better. Entertainment writers treated the show like it was beneath serious consideration. The mockery intensified when Raven started making movies like The Cheetah Girls and College Road Trip. Critics said she was stuck in a Disney bubble and couldn't transition to more sophisticated entertainment. They questioned whether she had any real acting ability or was just getting by on personality and energy. Her stint on The View brought a whole new level of criticism from people who said she wasn't smart enough or well-informed enough to discuss serious topics. Political commentators made fun of her controversial statements and suggested she should stick to entertainment rather than trying to be a serious voice on current events. But Raven's longevity in entertainment proved that critics had been missing something important about her appeal and talent. Her ability to connect with audiences across different formats, from sitcoms to talk shows to reality competition programs, showed a versatility that went beyond what traditional critics were looking for. Her recent return to Disney with Raven's Home proved that her original success wasn't just luck or timing, but genuine talent that could sustain across decades. Number 18. Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard developed a reputation for being that actor who does weird things with his voice long before anyone knew about his unusual theories about mathematics. His early performances were criticized for being too mannered and artificial, with critics saying he was trying too hard to create a distinctive style instead of just being natural. His breakthrough role in Hustle and Flow should have silenced the critics, but instead it led to new complaints about his acting choices. Some reviewers said his performance was too intense and that he was overacting in scenes that called for subtlety. They questioned whether his Oscar nomination was deserved or just the result of a weak year for leading actor performances. The criticism got more pointed when Howard started appearing in bigger budget films like Iron Man. Critics said his portrayal of James Rhodes was stiff and unconvincing, lacking the charisma needed to hold his own alongside Robert Downey Jr. When he was replaced in subsequent Marvel films, some entertainment writers suggested it proved their point about his limitations as an actor. His personal life and controversial statements didn't help his reputation with critics who were already skeptical of his acting ability. Entertainment reporters would write about his off-screen behavior and suggest it explained why his performances sometimes felt disconnected from reality. They said his eccentricity was bleeding into his work in ways that hurt his credibility. But Howard's central role in Empire proved that his unique approach to acting could be exactly what certain characters needed. His portrayal of Lucius Lyon was powerful and memorable in ways that more conventional actors might not have achieved. Number 19. Anthony Anderson. Anthony Anderson spent years being dismissed as just another loud comedian who couldn't do anything but slapstick comedy. His early movie roles in films like Barbershop and Scary Movie 3 got him labeled as a one-trick pony who could only play the funny fat guy sidekick. Critics said his performances were predictable and that he was coasting on his size and energy rather than developing real acting skills. The mockery got worse when Anderson started appearing in what critics called lowbrow comedies like Johnson Family Vacation and Transformers. Reviewers said these films proved he was willing to take any paycheck regardless of quality, and that he was part of the problem with modern comedy being dumbed down for mass audiences. Television critics were initially skeptical when Blackish premiered, wondering if Anderson could carry a family sitcom that dealt with serious social issues. They questioned whether someone known primarily for broad physical comedy could handle the more subtle requirements of playing a responsible father and husband. Some reviewers expected the show to rely too heavily on Anderson's comedic persona rather than creating a well-rounded character. His Emmy nominations for Blackish surprised critics who had written him off as just another comedic actor without dramatic range. They had to reevaluate their assumptions about Anderson's abilities when he started delivering performances that were funny, but also emotionally grounded and socially conscious. The transformation from being seen as a comedy sidekick to being recognized as a leading man capable of handling complex material proved that Anderson had been underestimated from the beginning. Number 20. Lena Waithe. Lena Waithe faced a unique type of criticism as someone who was challenging traditional expectations about what a Hollywood writer and actress should look like and sound like. Her early work was dismissed by some critics who said her writing was too specific to urban Black experiences to appeal to mainstream audiences. When Waithe started appearing as an actress in shows like Master of None, some critics said she was just playing herself and questioned whether that counted as real acting. They suggested she was benefiting from Hollywood's push for diversity rather than earning roles based on talent alone. Her Emmy win for writing on Master of None should have silenced doubters, but instead it led to new criticism about whether her success was sustainable or just a moment of recognition for underrepresented voices. Some entertainment writers questioned whether she could create content that would appeal beyond niche audiences. The launch of The Chi brought criticism from people who said Waithe was trying to do too much, writing, producing, and appearing in projects that were too ambitious for someone with limited experience. Critics questioned whether she had the skills to handle multiple roles in major productions. But Waithe's success with multiple projects proved that her critics had been underestimating her vision and ability. Her work on Queen and Slim and 20s showed range and creativity that went beyond what traditional Hollywood had been producing. She wasn't just succeeding despite the criticism. She was creating new models for how entertainment could be made and distributed. What do you think about these Black actors? Share your general thoughts in the comments section.